our thoughts, and really feel even more committed to making sure that we have this program open in person and available to support the communities that are wanting space for healing and support within community. So I appreciate everyone's efforts in making that happen. And I'll let Michelle kind of talk more about how, her first intro to the program, but I got involved with the program through Michelle, and it was really appealing to me through the Interfaith Counseling Center because we do a lot of referral support and kind of advocacy support of trying to help people connect to mental health and mental wellness resources, and finding that a lot of times people may be referred to mental health counseling, and for whatever reason that may not be what is most readily available, what sticks, what's most healing at that time, and that people really seeing the need for community support and healing within community. And that's what's so appealing to me, is kind of fostering and allowing a setting where people can come together and support healing among one another. And we work a lot through referrals through faith communities, and spirituality being a part of our health and wellness. The blend of these pieces for this program is really, I think, healing and beautiful, and kind of sometimes we don't always focus on in the bigger picture of mental wellness sometimes. So Michelle, I'm going to turn it over to you to kind of give a little more background of how we first learned and came together. Yeah.
How we met. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank everyone for joining. So I think you framed it wonderfully, Christine, in the sense that trauma, violence within our communities has been going on for quite some time. I back in maybe 2017-ish, before I was working with the Health Equity Institute, I was with the Center for Emergency Preparedness and Response. And at that time, there had been, a number of national shootings. We had, Trayvon Martin. We had a number of other unarmed young Black men that had been lost their lives at the hands of law enforcement. And there was just so much going on, even in our own community. And we had folks from the community reach out to us, to the health department, asking for support, asking for training, because it was a lot. And at that time, we really didn't have any resources available. I had been doing a lot of work around community resilience, but it was more for disasters and natural events, not necessarily at the neighborhood or community level. And that is what began my search for a program. And a colleague had shared an email about a conference that was being held at Roxbury Presbyterian Church, I believe in 2018. It was around October of 2018 that I went, up to Boston because I was very curious, right? It just sounded like it was going to be a good fit. So I went to the one-day conference on a Saturday, and it was like a match made in heaven. I met Colleen, I met Deborah, I met Reverend Liz Walker, and just spent the day learning more about the program. And by the end of the day, I knew that this was it. I needed to somehow bring this program back to the community in Rhode Island. And so we've been just, working since 2018 to really stand up Can We Talk in Rhode Island. Then, you and I, Christine, we met because we wanted to make sure that it was still, although it's a non-denominational program, we wanted to make sure that it was still sort of connected to the faith spiritual community and all the great work that ICC does. And, we had others that were involved as well. And we have just been moving forward since 2018, you know, we're working on getting this program up and running in Rhode Island. And so it's maybe year 3, and we are just plowing ahead.
Sorry, I had to find my unmute button. Thanks to both Christine and Michelle. I'm going to turn the platform over to Colleen. And I guess one of the things that we're hoping to learn about is just what is Can We Talk and the inspiration and intention behind it.
Thank you, Karen, Michelle, Christine. Thank you, everyone. It's wonderful to be with you. So what we're going to do is we've really spent quite a bit of time thinking about the best way to share this in a short amount of time, which is always good to do because it helps us reframe even better with more clarity what we're doing. And I'm going to start with a video, because in this video you'll get, it's a 2.5-minute video, you'll get really far more than I could share in the time we're speaking, and it just brings you right down to what we're doing. I will just say you'll get a sense of the history of it, but you'll also get a sense of what we're doing next, which I think is a really great thing. So give me a moment to share my screen, and we are going to do this. I'm going to put this over there. Can you hear that?
My community, it's a war zone. There's always cops flying down the street. There's always a crime scene going on.
I helped my next door neighbor bury her son who was murdered in Walgreens parking lot, and they threatened to kill my child at least 9 times.
I was raped by a Catholic priest.
And the phone was ringing, I picked it up, and the other voice said, "You better get to Brigham and Women because Corey has been shot." I think I knew right away that he was gone, but it was a kind of numb feeling.
What I've learned about trauma is if you hold it in, it consumes you. It takes your body over.
Come find your mercy.
Love, support, consistency, and safety.
We are trying to create a platform for young men to be able to talk about their pain, their fears, and what is going on, and so that they can begin to have a place to share how they feel.
So when Doug reached out to me, I was immediately enlightened and in tune with him that we should indeed pursue this, because I think that folks in my town in Chattanooga and beyond really need to speak to one another, listen to one another. And sometimes we can feel alone as an individual, we can feel alone in our neighborhoods, and we can feel alone in our cities, that this struggle is just our struggle. But it isn't just a struggle of Chattanooga. It isn't just a Southern struggle. It isn't simply the struggle of Boston. It is a national struggle for freedom and justice and healing.
I think that it's going to be okay. I really feel that.
Okay, so you got a real sense of where this started. You saw Deborah and Reverend Liz talking about it and where we're going with one of the next pieces of this. And so I'm just going to share my PowerPoint with you, and I'm going to try to take you through. It's really interesting what this question, and Karen and Christine and Michelle were so great at the questions they asked for today. It helped me to put this together in a way that tries to give you a sense of what we went through, even as I present the slides. So I'll try to, and in that order, you'll get a sense of that's kind of how we did this. So give me just a moment to do another little share here. And I'm going to try to get rid of my little pictures here so that you can see the whole thing. And hold on one more second, because this lovely little thing gets in the way every time. And can someone just tell me that you can see that?
Yes, we can.
Great. So this is a picture of our church, Roxbury Presbyterian Church in Boston, and we are the Social Impact Center, which is a 501c3 of the church. And within the Social Impact Center is the Corey Johnson Program for Post-Traumatic Healing. And the Corey Johnson Program started in 2014, so we're really in our 7th year. And this is just to give you, like, this is our real mission statement. And you're going to see that we're saying we're Christ inspired, because that's who we are. But anybody who replicates, we designed this whole program to be for people of all ways of identifying in their spiritual life. So, and in any other way they identify. So this is just speaking from who we are. So we really use the word spiritual more than religious, but for our mission statement, that's how we describe ourselves. So we say that we're a Christ-inspired, community-based, clinically supported program that offers a safe and sacred space for the sharing of painful stories. And we do that by increasing awareness and understanding of trauma, providing relief from traumatic stress, and delivering mental health supports. And you can see at the bottom that we're just really naming this. Regardless of any way that someone identifies, in all ways, everyone's welcome. And we believe that what we call our abiding presence is powerful enough to hold those who have suffered trauma as they learn to help themselves and others heal. So I just thought I'd start with, we didn't know this in the beginning. This was the one slide we didn't know in the beginning, but I thought it was important that you knew this before I share everything. That what we've come to know is these are the essentials of Can We Talk when someone does choose to replicate. So what we call our essence, that we are spiritually based, and we ask everyone to be connected to body, mind, and spirit, not just body and mind, in whatever they do with Can We Talk. That it's community based, and that again, it's clinically supported. And we mean by clinically supported and not clinically run. So I'm a licensed mental health counselor. I'm the clinician that's part of the program as well as the director. And so I'm there to support it. I'm there if needed. But we think it's essential that you have someone who's licensed, because if at any point someone is having a hard time, you could be there available if a community companion who you'll be hearing about could not help them. So the logistics that are essential is that you have safe space, you make that space safe, that you have hospitality of some sort. When we're in person, which we can't wait to get back to, we serve dinner for every time before we start a Can We Talk. But that could be just refreshments if someone wanted to, but just some kind of hospitality. That you would have community companions who are peers who have suffered trauma and lost themselves and can be accompanying people in the program. That you have at least one artist when you're in person, somebody who can do some kind of music, and you'll hear more about this as I talk. That you welcome everyone of all identifications, and that you keep the Can We Talk model itself in, that it's a model of integrity, and we ask that to be, if you use a Can We Talk model, you use it in the way that we're presenting it. And so I'm putting this on because this is the best way to go through what we were noticing people were saying before Can We Talk started. This would be Reverend Liz Walker, who really noticed this. She saw the pain on people's face as they were walking down the street. And this is how you hear it. That someone is always, you either notice they're angry or they say, I'm always angry, that I can't concentrate on anything. That they're asking, why do I feel like this? That life has no meaning anymore, and that I feel like I'm constantly on alert, expecting danger and bad things to happen. Those are the things that people would report they were feeling like and didn't have answers to, and therapy wasn't helping it completely. And, you know, they were wondering if there was any more support that the church or others could give. So we decided back in 2014, we called it Can We Talk? Could we just get together and give a space for people to share their stories of trauma, loss, and we say healing, because people also want to share what their healing is like as they're going through that. And so Can We Talk allows people to share their stories within community. We knew that from the beginning. That's really what we intended. And in the beginning, we did it once a month. People would talk about, and they still do, physical, sexual, emotional abuse, violence in the home and on the street, bullying, job loss, betrayal, and racism. They talk about illness, death of a loved one, and losses of all types. And they also share stories of hope, healing, and growth. Young and old from different backgrounds and ways of identifying, they listen to each other. And as they share their stories, and we noticed this the first night we did it back in September of 2014, that as long as we provided safe and consistent space, that they were experiencing a decrease in isolation and an increase in a sense of connection, which we know are key aspects of the trauma healing journey. So we're currently on Zoom. We've shifted it to that, but this is what a Can We Talk is all about. And we knew these are things we started with, that we knew we wanted no barrier or requirement to entry. You can just drop in. You don't have to tell us you're coming, whether it's online or whether it is in person. That really, there's no cost, there's nothing, no referral needed. And that when we're in person, we always like to start with dinner. It's a great way for people to feel welcome. It's around the dinner time. It would be 6:30 on a Thursday night, that it was really important that we offered that. We clearly made it that we were peer-led by community companions such as Deborah, who's on this Zoom with us, and that they are going to be the ones who will help comfort and connect with and offer support. And also they can come to me as the clinician at any time also, but the focus is the community companions. And that when we were in person, we decided to offer trauma-informed childcare during the programming. That is not a prerequisite for people to replicate. It's just something that we wanted to offer so that adults could come if they had children. That we had that on a night of Can We Talk, whether it's online or in person, we welcome people and we read some guidelines, which you will see in this presentation. That we believed it was important to bring music in. So we have 3 artists who are also online when we're doing Zoom now, as well as in person. You can do, if you're in person, we ask you to consider having at least one. We have a saxophone player, a dancer, and a singer. And placed throughout the hour that we do the program, it's really helpful to help with what folks are hearing. And so we start with an artist in the beginning, and then we have an open microphone for sharing. We ask that people share. I've actually recently changed it to about 3 to 4 minutes instead of 3 to 5. But you get the idea, and you can set your own time frame. You're asking people to stick to that amount of time, that they can just share in words, poem, song, or silence. Sometimes if people just want to be more silent and just kind of weep with you, that has happened a few times. That the licensed clinician is available if needed, the artist as I talked about, and at the end when we're in person, we have a closing ritual that we would do. No reason to go into that right now for time, but you create your own kind of way of closing that's really helpful to folks, and it is artistic in a way. We would have announcements, and people can let us know if they want to be on our email list, and that we offer support and referrals beyond the Can We Talk. If someone wants additional support and wants to be referred for other mental health care, we're there for them. These are the guidelines. I'm not going to read every one of them. I'll let you just sort of let your eyes go over it. But what I haven't mentioned so far is that it's important people just are participating by listening. You don't have to share. We're also saying that you please don't use the time to give advice or comment on another person's sharing. That's number 1, safety. And people pretty much abide by that. We ask people to silence their cell phones, keep what they hear confidential. And then we also say that, you know, when we were in person, we found that as you're getting ready to leave, that doesn't mean that you start giving advice to someone when you're chit-chatting on the way out the door. We found that that is what keeps this safe, is that people know they can share what they want with just support they're getting back, and not people trying to fix it or tell them what to do, that type of thing. So these guidelines work on Zoom as well as in person. And I just have to say, after 7 years, it's kept its safe space. So there we were with that framework. We knew we wanted to do it that way. It was pretty clear that was what we felt called to do. So we then had to say, all right, as we just started listening to people every month, we're now doing it every week. We were, a few years in, started to do it every week. But we really needed to say, okay, how do we understand trauma and traumatic experience? And so what we came up with was this definition that we found from SAMHSA, that it's an event, a series of events or a set of circumstances that someone experiences as harmful or threatening, and that has lasting effects on their functioning and well-being. So that could mean a lot of things, and that's the point, because to feel a traumatic reaction is an individual experience, and it has to be a wide enough definition that honors people who are experiencing trauma. And I just put this up here. There's many different ways, when we're saying traumatic events, what do we mean? And on the left, you can see all kinds of things. Physical trauma people get, violent trauma, natural disasters, loss and stress and bereavement, neglect and abandonment. Betrayal is in there. When people feel like they've been hurt by someone they trusted, right then they have trauma on top sometimes of another trauma. You have to think about, was there trauma at their birth? Often in my own therapy practice, I found that that's one of the traumas people are experiencing. Witnessing any of these events can bring trauma. And then on the right side, we were very clear we had to raise this that has not been really seen as traumatic, to be honest, until the last 5 to 10 years. It was not talked about this way, but poverty can cause trauma. Racism and oppression cause trauma. Of course they do. Historical and systemic trauma exists. And when I was getting trained years ago, that was not talked about. So we want to keep really lifting these up as actually key traumas that most folks who come to us have experienced. And we knew in the beginning, we started to hear that trauma was chronic and complex, meaning that you could have multiple trauma exposures across your lifespan, and they can be systemic, as we know. When someone just remains in an environment or a bunch of environments that continue to cause direct trauma to them or trigger them. So it was important that we named that as we learned about trauma. And then, we just had to say, okay, there's transgenerational and historical trauma at work here. And Rachel Yehuda's work is so powerful that we're 3 times more likely to develop depression and anxiety if one of our parents had PTSD. It's inherited rather than from exposure to the stories. And descendants of trauma survivors carry those symptoms, even though they didn't directly experience it. Too much to go into now. I'll just say that it doesn't actually change the DNA. It actually changes the way that the genes express in your DNA. And it really is an inherited thing. So this is on top of whatever people may experience in their own lifetimes. Let me get this word here. So this is what my top of my screen, forgive me, says trauma and healing. How do we understand that? So we created an acronym to go with the word trauma, and we created an acronym to go with the word healing that really captures the main event and the main things we have to think about with trauma. So T would be that you have a traumatic event. R is that your brain and your body respond to that traumatic event. That because of that, you end up getting an accumulation of energy, of traumatic energy that can actually get stuck in your body from the events that you go through. The U is that you have an unexpressed wound or story. M is that meaning seems lost. And A, your abilities are hard to access. People report they can't concentrate, they can't do their job, their memory's gone. So these are some key symptoms of trauma. And for healing, we're saying that you need to approach it holistically in a mind, body, and spirit way. The E stands for emotional regulation. And what that means is that trauma disrupts our emotions, and folks can't really control their emotions, and they have to learn how to do that and intervene for that. So you've got to have some emotional regulation. A, that you need to address and release that stuck energy in your body. So important to release that energy, to get it out of you through all kinds of physical ways that are healthy, and that has to be part of the healing. L is that you can have levels of spiritual development occur, higher level of spiritual development through the healing process. I is that you try to remain in the present. When your mind tries to take you back to the past or worry about the future, you want to try to remember to stay mindful in the present. And that you really journey towards a new meaning and a new purpose. And G, that you give that expression of story, which obviously is something that CanWeTalk does. And clearly there's a lot more training we do on these different aspects, but we just wanted to highlight them for you today. And here's the other thing. Judith Herman, just the essence of trauma healing and recovery that we have built. We have used her model as the foundation for what we do. And these 3 things that you're going to see about what traumatic experience leads to and how you address it are based on her model and her understanding and her research, and we've just adapted them for our program. So basically, she says that with traumatic experience, you're going to feel a loss of safety and trust, that you're going to have a disconnection, that literally our body and brain disconnect after trauma, and that we also feel this extreme disconnection from ourselves, others, and higher power. And we have that loss of meaning and purpose. So that if you're going to have healing, you've got to get a relative sense of safety and trust. You've got to have a reconnection between your body and brain and with others, and a new sense of meaning and purpose. And I'm now going to turn it over to Deborah. And after she speaks, I'll go into some of the key aspects of actually developing a Can We Talk program.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Deborah Johnson. I'm Corey Johnson's mom, and I'm also a community companion. Since this program began on September 11th, 2014, it has changed my life and the life of my family. I knew how my son's death was affecting me, but after several therapists, I still felt helpless. I thought my feelings of disconnection and sadness would be my norm. No one mentioned a healthy journey. Even though this is going to be a lifelong journey for me and others in the program, and for the special people I walk with, we have come to realize there is some light, and we don't have to go this alone. This Can We Talk model is helping our community come together in numerous ways. The people in our community needed a safe walk-in space where no one is questioning them about their health insurance, like where you've been, where you're going. And they needed to just come and feel their feelings without judgment. This program, I think, provides that for them. They look forward to the fellowship, although, we don't exactly call it that because, we are church-based, but we're not church. And we remind them of that all the time. We're not here to church you. Folks from every walk of life come together, sharing a meal, trusting each other with some of their deepest fears and secrets. Listening is a huge part of the program. When we feel heard, trust begins. Because it is a church, there's an element of safety and sacredness. Even though we tell them we are not here to church you, I think that in the 6.5 years that we've been doing this program, I don't think anyone has ever disrespected the space, even if they, are not like church-going people. I think just because it's in the church, that people have a certain amount of, they feel safe, and I think that they have a certain amount of respect for it. In this present climate, though, there's a need for these programs like the one we do, the Can We Talk. Folks are out here hurting, they're discouraged, they're triggered at every turn. No place to vent. They're keeping it bottled up, causing more violence, more broken homes, more kids caught up in the madness and getting left behind. Can We Talk started because there was a need. 6.5 years later, and because of the year we have all been through, it has now become an urgent need. I feel that the program, the people that I walk with, being a companion, I think they have really, they're satisfied with the kind of abiding that we do with them. Because, we don't just, you come to the program and then you leave, you tell us your secrets, your stories, your fears, and then you just go home. If you want a deeper connection, we are here for that. So I think that our program is thriving pretty good because of the abiding. I think people, when they tell you their story, they just don't want you to just drop them and go. They need that, ongoing kind of care. Even if it's just like as a community companion, I may call people once every 2 weeks, check in, or they might call me. I've gone out to lunch with them, and just people just need people. And I think that we're providing that at Can We Talk. So I think that kind of echoes a lot of what Colleen just said, but yeah.
Can I pose a question here or a comment? Because I think maybe others are feeling this way too. Deborah, that was lovely. That concept of abiding and standing with people through the process beyond just the weekly or monthly gathering is so important. And I know that we have a lot of community health workers who are participating in these webinars and who are looking to ways they can be that abiding support mechanism to folks in the community. Can you just talk a little bit, maybe just how do you sustain that for yourself? And for someone in the community, I know that it's important. Just knowing that there's somebody there that they can reach out to is important. So maybe just a little bit more about that, because I think that's so important right now.
Deborah, we can't hear you.
Of course not, because I was muted. We were trained. We had I think it was like 6 weeks. We had like a 6-week training. I can't remember exactly how long it was. And, they came in and gave us some guidelines and some, what do I want to say? Like some, well, mostly guidelines, like how we should go about companioning with someone. And to me, it's really more about the listening. Like whenever I have to call someone, they really just want to talk. And I'm not a professional clinician or anything. So I cannot give that kind of advice. That's why we have Colleen. So we call her if it gets to, but it's been like a great walk, because the people, you can tell that they appreciate it. They want you to stay with them. They absolutely want you to stay with them. And I think the goal is to just provide a safe space, like they feel like, what you're telling them, it's confidential, unless it's, something dangerous and, if they're going to harm themselves or something, we have to call Colleen. But other than that, I think they just want to be heard. And if you can, just listen. It's really all about the listening, I find. Because mostly when I call the people, I say, hello, how are you? And then, oh, it was nice talking to you. That's the end. Because in the middle, they just want to talk. They just need somebody to talk to. I mean, I'm not providing therapy or, I'm not a coach or any kind of counseling. I'm just listening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for that. I think we tend to forget how important that role is in the process. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, Deborah, as always, for your wisdom. I'm going to share my screen again to take it almost right from where you took us, Karen. You'll be seeing in just a moment. We'll be getting into that piece. Let me just see here. Here's where I want to go. And again, you can hear me, a thumbs up, somebody? Great, thank you. So now I'm going to just sort of shift right from there for 3 main steps to developing Can We Talk that we went through. And it's really around how we're responding to everything I just shared with you about trauma and what folks are going through. So step 1 is why. I'm supposed to hide this part of it, sorry. Let's see if I can hide the video. I'm doing it wrong again. Forgive me, everyone. I'm going to see if I can make it just want to see if I can make it. I knew it before, but it's not doing it. There we go. It's a little better there. So step one is really, why are you doing this? And I can't say this enough. You have to have your own reason for doing this, your own mission, your own purpose, your own sense of why you would want to do this as who you are as an organization, a church, or a house of worship, or a interfaith place. And so what's your purpose and call? You need that clarity and to be united in that. And we were right from the beginning. And I'd say one of our replication sites early on had struggled to get that, but once they did, it went better. It's really key that you're all on board with why you're doing it and what it's, what it means to you. I'm going to use something, not going to go deeply into it. Simon Sinek is online. It's called the Golden Circle. He has a model that years ago, before I did this program, it spoke to me about anything we do for around purpose. And it's really this. You start with what's the bottom circle there, why you're doing something. And out of why you're doing it becomes your how, and how you do it becomes your what. And so I'll use us as an example because of who we are. Why means who you are. We are Christians at this church. We're called by Christ to be love. And we feel like our whole reason to be is to be in service to brothers and sisters in pain. So if we have that why, the how, that's where you see that abiding. We weren't just going to be, Reverend Liz got that word out of a book that she read because she, on trauma and support, because you can help people, you can support people, but abide means you remain with them. Abide means you're going to be there outside regular time and beyond what you're offering. And so we found that that was how we wanted to do this, and that how we do it is to respond, love, teach, companion, support, all those action words. And then what do? Is we offer safe space, we share story within community, we have the dinner and companions. Now that's for our Can We Talk. We do other things besides that, but this is focused on the Can We Talk. And I want to, just before I go on, I want to say, if you look at the what, people tend to say, what do you do, right? If I said if I answered, what do you do? I say, we provide safe space, we share a story within community, dinner and companions. But if that's all you knew about us, you actually could see many different ways we could do that. But it isn't until you understand our why and how we do it. That's where the real roots of what we are doing. That's why we say, get to your purpose and your call and your why, how, and what. And we can help you walk through that when we train replication sites now. We start, the first day we do training, we start with this and helping people get to this. Step 2 is you got to form your team. If you don't already have them, you got to go seek them out. And you need to spend as much time as you can, because the team is who holds this. If you are not united in purpose and call, if you are not clear on why you're there and wanting to do this and how you're going to do it, it isn't really going to be something that offers an abiding presence, is it? You really need to work on that and have that team. And the team is those community companions you've heard, the artists and residents, the hospitality companions. We have companions that's what they do when we're in person. They're the people that love to serve the food. If you have a childcare, and again, that's not necessary, you have childcare providers, but you also have the licensed mental health clinician, and that having the right people to form this team is essential. And these community companions, just to say a little more about who they are and what the essence of it is, we see it as neighbors abiding with neighbors, the connecting, listening that Deborah talked about, leading with compassion, and leading with empathy, not sympathy. And we do some training on what we mean by that, how to do an empathic response as opposed to a sympathetic one, and why that's important. And the essence of what Deborah said is you're just present. You offer your presence, and people know that you're not going to go away. You're going to be there when they need you. And so presence, presence, presence. I think this is one of the new things I'm adding into the training. It's adapted from the Phenomenal Peer Counseling by Dr. Barbara Love. And how I've adapted this is to why community companions are essential to this trauma healing. And when we're dealing with, she talks about when we're dealing with social identity-based trauma, which is what, in the communities we're talking about here, where there's systemic racism and oppression of all types, historical trauma, it's essential that when you've got a social identity-based trauma, in our particular case, that's the example I'm using, You need a healing model that can help a large number of people. She says trauma continues to be reenacted. People in our program are talking about racism and trauma, and the next day, just because they've talked about it, it isn't going to go away. It's continually being enacted in their life, and so they need more support for that reason. That you need to have access to members of the community, and I've always said from the beginning, if you have community trauma, you need community healing. Every person has the best resources for their own healing, and we have seen this over the 7 years. The resources for healing are already within the people that come to the program, and it's about supporting that. Each person is best qualified to make meaning of their story. Telling one's story, she talks about, brings an embodied discharge process. The minute I saw that as a clinician, I was just so excited, because this is one of those ways in which you get trauma stuck in your body out. And we've witnessed this. By being able to step up and tell your story, you know, you get a discharge from being able to do that and have others heal it, have others hear it, and that can facilitate healing. And that telling your story within community, she says, allows for essential, aware, caring attention of another human being. And I think Deborah, what you heard her say, she is talking about providing aware, caring attention. The person knows you're aware of them, you're caring, and you're paying attention. That these are key to this kind of healing. And so step 3 is helping you, you know, each replication site, we had to do this. How do you understand and respond to trauma in the healing process? How do you understand it? And I'm going to go back to my slide I gave you in the beginning. We understand it by these types of things that people say they're feeling. And so that's pain. And we understand trauma as pain. So it's not, so we ask more and think more in our minds, what is your pain? What's the source of your pain? It's not what's wrong with you, it's what happened to you. Very key difference in this. So that's how we chose to understand this trauma and healing process. And this iceberg is just to say that trauma is something that you'll often only see the tip of that wound or the tip of the trauma. You might see an injury or hear about an illness or violence that happened or homelessness someone's going through, unemployment. You might see what people call, and I hate this term, but it's what people understand, dysfunctional families. You might understand that racism is happening, this person is experiencing this. You might see behavior that's happened, loss that's happened, poverty that they're living in. But you don't see what's really happened to them in a way that has really wounded them until they're going to tell you that. You can't assume that those things in the tip of the iceberg are what you understand them to be. And you're not going to see this regulation of emotion in the way that you're going to experience it by them maybe having a hard time with their anger or their numbing, whatever. You need to understand and watch for that emotional struggle they're going through. And you're not going to see disconnection unless you look for it, until you see the remnants of them feeling disconnected and they can tell you about it, and that sense of disempowerment. So remember, there's always something so much more about what's happened to people. So here's what we did. If I'm going to say, how do we understand trauma and healing? How are we going to walk with people? It's place, presence, and process for us. Number 1, that it's safe, sacred space that's trustworthy and consistent, whether it's online or in person. And there's that word abide. It is key to every way we approach this. And so our presence is offering relationship that is an abiding presence. And it's a process that's trauma informed, but we're connecting with the person's perseverance, because that honors what's already been working for them and what's within them, and working with their desire for healing. So everything we do, that's the structure we're doing it within. And lastly, this is just a great quote that I think captures us, that we see this as action based in service, in which we are all equals. That our wounded places as the team are meeting the wounded places of those who come through the doors, and that our hopeful places meet their hopeful places. And we resonate with Rachel Naomi Remen's quote, "The wholeness in us serves the wholeness in others and the wholeness in life." So I'm going to turn this over to my colleague Dana, and she is going to go through the challenges and benefits of the program.
Thank you, Colleen. So before I do that, I just want to quickly explain a little bit of my role because, oh, you're going to keep the slides up?
I didn't.
Go ahead and keep.
Do you want to just talk first and then I'll put them on?
Sure, and then you'll put the slides back up. Sure, no, that's fine. That's fine because, well, you know, again, as Colleen said earlier, you know, this presentation came out of the questions that Christine and Michelle and Karen asked us when we met, and it was really a wonderful process for us to go back and reflect on our journey at multiple stages. And there's an organization in Boston called the Emmanuel Gospel Center that they have this wonderful model of what they call action reflection. And you do something, and then what happens is so many people just keep acting and they don't ever take the time to reflect. So in a sense, it's been wonderful actually just in these last few days to reflect at a new level. So when they asked the question about benefits and challenges, we realized that a lot of what we would say in regards to benefits and challenges has come out of what we are learning from our replication sites. So my title as Replication Associate is really to walk alongside. And I realized I was sitting here listening to this and going, you know, Colleen, what I'm doing is I'm abiding with our replication sites in the same way that our community companions abide with the individuals who come to the program. Because literally every month, you know, and again, it's kind of funny how God's used the pandemic because it would not have been possible for me to abide with our replication sites the way I have during the past year because I can jump on a Zoom call. So literally over the course of the month, I can actually be with every single replication site that we have, listen, understand, learn about their team and all of those kinds of things. So just to give you a broad brush, we have 7 replication sites. Well, we have 7 total sites, 7 replication sites. 4 of them are in Greater Boston. Then there's the one in Providence and the one in Chattanooga that you guys have heard of. And there was a 7th that was in Gary, Indiana, but that one is actually on a hiatus right now. It was actually the first replication site. And actually the fact that it's on hiatus, you know, is part of that reflection of why it's on hiatus is part of how we got to the benefits that we shared. So that helps you understand a little bit more what my role is. And then, yeah, Colleen, if you want to put the slides back up. Yeah, so you just go ahead. Yeah, so the benefits of the Can We Talk model. Now, a lot of what I'm going to say is really repeating, almost an exclamation point to what you've heard already. And I think what we're doing is kind of saying, out of all the things that we've heard in terms of what we needed in order to develop this model, these are the things that we are realizing. It's a little bit like Colleen's slide in terms of essentials. As we reflected, we've realized that these are the things that most benefit as a replication site is developed, but also the challenges that we see are different replication sites coming together. So clearly, again, we've said this multiple times, but it can't be said enough that this idea of abiding and companioning is really the core benefit of this long-term abiding. The reason why I put both in this one is because abiding is really about presence. Companioning adds that relational thing of actually literally walking alongside, and you need both. Sometimes abiding is just present. It is just being there and being consistent and all of that kind of stuff. But the companioning is a little bit more, I think, of what Deborah talked about in terms of that actual action alongside someone. So abiding, we welcome all who come. We reflect that in our hospitality. We reflect it in everything about our model. And then, as we said earlier, we're not here to fix. We are to be the hands, hearts, feet, eyes of God. And this is so key because I think what happens so much in many of the healthcare systems is they're not able to be patient, whether it's an institutional thing or whatever, but they just are either overloaded or they're just their systems the way they're designed. But that patience and that flexibility in being able to adapt to the people that come to them is one of the things that we're actually able to demonstrate that we're trustworthy and that we are kind and that we are caring. And again, I don't think the mental health systems, it's not that they don't want to be patient and flexible and kind and caring, and certainly that is part of who they are, but it's just oftentimes there are institutional constraints and demands upon them that make that difficult. And so we've just raised that up to a higher bar for our particular program. All right, so the next slide. We've also touched on this. Ours is peer-to-peer. It is not the, the mental health specialists. It's not the people that are doing the therapy. And again, I think it was Karen, actually, you talked about the need for a continuum. And that is so incredibly important. So we're not trying to replace. There is a huge need for what's being provided within the mental health community. But as she said, and as we've learned in our own work, is those resources are overtaxed. They can't provide everything. And even if they could, I think in terms of this long-term abiding and companioning, is that really the best use of resources as you're walking alongside people in the community? So this peer-to-peer model, one of the things that we've learned is it actually helps in overcoming some of the stigma of mental health. A lot of cultures, a lot of communities admitting the vulnerability that you even have a mental health issue is huge. So if you come in and you find one of your peers in your community is open and vulnerable and willing to share about that, that starts to break down barriers that might prevent you from ever going to a community health center or a mental health center or any of those kinds of things. And so actually this peer-to-peer model can open someone up to the possibility of long-term counseling that they might not have ever considered before. Promoting collaboration and empowerment. Again, if this is my peer, I'm going to feel that I am actually being empowered because they are walking with me. Whereas regardless of how much we would try to do as a mental health specialist to break down the power dynamic of being a mental health person and your client, people still sometimes feel that power dynamic, whereas a peer-to-peer model, that power dynamic is gone. It's more on a peer level. And so sometimes you can hear things from a peer support model that you might not be able to hear in other environments. And then finally, this idea of helping to fill the gap. I know, again, Karen, you touched on that at the beginning, and Colleen, I know in the work that the research that they've been doing, they have seen this a lot, but I was particularly struck with a study that was done by a Northeastern student that she shared with us a couple of years ago, where she literally looked at 3 different areas around the church in Roxbury. And she kind of did an assessment of people that said they wanted, they needed access to mental health. And I don't remember the statistics exactly, but it roughly broke down into thirds, where a third were able to get services within 30 to 90 days. A third, it was at least 6 months or more before they were able to access services. And a third of the people that responded to the service, even though they reached out, they were never able to get access to services at all. So the gap is huge. And so this is a place that a community support model like this can work. So next slide. And again, this has been said multiple times, but I think particularly to help people, everyone participates. So for me, when I first discovered Can We Talk, I was coming into a community that was not my community. I learned about this model. I wanted to be a part. And I remember that after the first night being so blown away, but I said to people on the team, sorry, I'm hearing stuff in my backyard. Hold on 1 second and see. Just in case. But I remember thinking, wow, can I attend this program where I'm not part of the community? Or are they going to think as an outsider? Is that a problem? And I still remember what they said to me that first night. No, exactly this, that listening and witnessing the stories of others is just as important as sharing. And so being able to come in and learn, and again, in the introduction, I've been doing ministry in the city of Boston for 30 years. I've learned more probably in the last 4 years about what the reality it is to be in the city of Boston and to live in those communities than I have at any other point in ministry. All right, so next. We talked about the artistic expression, and I just want to highlight that because I know for me on the Can We Talk, when the artistic expression becomes a release for me. Even listening to the stories can be challenging over the course of an hour. And so I can sort of sometimes feel that building up in me. And then when Robin comes and sings a song, or Wyatt comes and does a dance, it helps sort of release that process. So that artistic expression. And we also do art and writing nights that actually allow us to access different parts of our brain in order to access different parts of our story. So that's really key to our process. And then finally, the trauma healing network that we're developing that I mentioned at the beginning. So we gather all of the replication sites about once a quarter to share what's happening, to learn from one another, and hearing how this model gets expressed, because each one does get expressed very differently depending upon the context, but hearing how they're being expressed in those different contexts, what their challenges are that they're facing, has taught us so much and helped us even to refine the core model that we continue to develop at Roxbury Pres Church. And then the second one is just what are some of the challenges that we faced? I would say the number one challenge has been what I would call team development and sustainability. You know, Colleen used this team. I don't know if you've ever heard that from real estate, it's location. So this is team. And then I have another one with the second one. I mean, the team, as Colleen talked about, really is the core of this program. And yet it's also the hardest part to hold together. People come at the beginning with a great deal of passion and interest, and you need that passion and that vision. If you don't have that, as Colleen said, if you don't have that why, that really ultimately is the core that holds you together. But at the same time, most of these teams, they're involved in other things, they're involved in other organizations. And so how do you hold them together? How do you make sure that over time that the team dynamics are sustainable? And so I think a couple of things that we've run into is that you need some kind of structure that connects, that allows a point of connection regularly so that the team members feel supported in this work. And so that there's an ongoing relationship building. It isn't literally about them just showing up and supporting the participants that are coming, but it's really deepening that among each others. And so over the course of time, we've taken weekend retreats. We have, during the pandemic, it was essential because we didn't have any other time to be together. We have weekly team meetings and other things like that. So you need that structure in place so that the team is continuing to get to know and deepen in their relationships. And then we also have to pay attention to self-care. And so a lot of the core of those retreats and things like that are self-care things. I mean, Colleen's teaching us, she's our spiritual director in many ways. So that's the core one. Second one is how do you deepen the community connections? And again, here it's relationship. You know, we can tend to think of outreach as purely promotion. So you put together cards or emails or different things to send it out. And the hope is that by sending that out as broadly as possible, you're going to get people to respond. And it does happen. And so that's an important part. I don't want to discount that. But ultimately, the outreach that leads to connection is done through relationship. So it's doing a community assessment. Which are the organizations that already have roots in your community? Who are they connected with? Are they the organizations that actually have that deep, trusted relationship with the people that you want to reach already? Oftentimes, it's not an organization. We find that a lot of the work, and this is where Shondell Davis, who's our community health specialist, is, she knows who the trusted community organizers are out there. And often they have relationships in housing projects and other things like that. But if you don't know who those are, your ability to, because again, so much of what we do is word of mouth. And so it's really building on those relationships and finding out how to make those connections and deepen them and go beyond just promotion into what we are really truly calling outreach. And then finally, collaboration, trying to figure out what is where do we have a shared purpose with those organizations so that they believe their the goals of their organization are being met and they're not just simply sending people. And so how can we collaborate on this process? When we say partnering with grounded organizations, I think you do need to look at organizations that have some capacity, because again, if somebody's just showing up once a month to support this program, that makes it hard to sustainable. And so finding organizations where they're willing to commit some of their people to sort of really be available and support this vision and mission going now. And then the final thing, funding is always a key part of this, and we just had to say it. We won't go into the detail of what it is, But I think it's also, because this is a peer-to-peer model, it's not funded probably in the same way that a lot of organizations and nonprofits are. And so we do work with our replication sites to come up with budgets that fit with the money they have available, fit with, you know, the level of capacity they have in their leaders and in their core team. So I think that's where I'll end.
You know, I really appreciate this, Dana, because, you know, I work in the arena of public policy, organizing, and advocacy. And when I saw you go down that list of challenges, these are the same challenges we face in any quality community organizing effort, right? Having collaborations among grounded and trusted community organizations, having capacity and really mapping out what is our capacity, what can we do, and assessing, doing an honest, almost mapping, community mapping exercise to make sure we're connecting where we need to connect. I know for some groups, especially if they are a smaller volunteer-led group or a faith-based group, that this can seem a little overwhelming. And, you know, once making that commitment to put something like Can We Talk forward, which involves a commitment to abide with and stick with community members, that finding those connections can be challenging. So I'm wondering if maybe a couple other folks can, and maybe this is Michelle and Chris can weigh in on this. If we're talking about really helping engender some similar style programming components in Rhode Island, who's there to help? Who's there to help a small group really do the examination of the why, do the thoughtfulness around community mapping and planning and building that's required?
Yeah, I'll jump in and you know, Christine, certainly, you know, this has been a journey for us. I can truly say, you know, with the concept of abiding, that our partners and colleagues at Roxbury Presbyterian Church have been abiding with us. And they have really stood by us over these 3.5 years to help us work through. I mean, we have faced challenges. I think, you know, Dana's point where, you know, you build a team, you build a great team, and we built an awesome team. And we, you know, Colleen and Dana and the rest of the folks came down from Roxbury and spent time with us doing training. We even had to do our own Can We Talk, which was very powerful. And we were off and running. And some of the, you know, the challenges we faced were even just trying to find a host site. We thought that would be the easiest part of this, and it became the most difficult part of this. Was where, you know, where is this program going to land? And the, you know, the leadership and the staff at the Nonviolence Institute, you know, embraced the program and allowed us to come there. But that took months for us to find a home. But you know, again, Colleen, Dana, and crew, they just hung in there with us. And once we found a home, then our team started to kind of fall apart a little bit, you know, and then COVID hit. So once we thought we had some really good traction, you know, it was just one challenge after another, but we just felt so strongly about this program, and we weren't going to let it go. And so when, you know, for those that may be interested in standing up a program, I can assure you that, you know, the support is there, the abiding is there. You know, we took the program online. We hope to open it up again, you know, in the summer to be able to go back in person, but we still have some work to do. We have to rebuild our team. And, but I think we're just, Christine and I are just so excited about this program that, you know, we accept and embrace those challenges, and we just kind of feel this is our year, and we're going to have a strong program. Christine, I'll allow you to jump in.
Thanks. Yeah, I just want to reiterate that as we have been abided with, Michelle and I will abide with Rhode Island as well. Who people that want to be part of a team or consider, another program. And I want to just address a little, like a challenge that we had when, Dana, like you mentioned, grounded community organizations. Making the shift, we started off really strong in person, and then trying to make the shift to an online program, we had really connected with some very grounded organizations, but organizations who are grounded in the community in face-to-face faith communities and outreach workers and the Nonviolence Institute, places that operate in face-to-face relationship, not our virtual world as much. So that was really a difficult transition. And we kept thinking it must just be this or that, or, a different flyer, or we need to promote it more. But I think that's something we've really seen as a challenge, and also really being excited about the opportunity of being back in person when that makes sense for all health involved. That connecting with community in this really deep relational way can be difficult by Zoom. And I think, you all have had a long history of already connecting to people in that way. So people were looking for it, whereas we find a lot of people mentioning the program, but then Zoom seems like, no, that's not how I'm going to attend. So trying to address that challenge and then re-up. And I think COVID sort of, hit many people in similar ways and many people in different ways. So that really sort of disrupted the kind of flow of our team. So looking to, regroup in terms of team moving forward as well.
Yeah, no, I'm really glad you said that, Christine, because I meant to mention that so with 7 replication sites, 3 launched before COVID, 2 launched within a month of the pandemic shutdown, 1 launched literally like a week after the shutdown happened. And then our 7th site has actually now launched, but it was a year into COVID, and they ended up actually using COVID as a time to do some of that deeper outreach in their community using, actually using Zoom. But we learned that because we've been in the pandemic for a while. So honestly, the Providence site and a couple of the others, the fact that you guys still exist as a team is actually just remarkable given what you faced. But again, the beauty of this is because it's a model that unfolds over time. There's a core place that you can start and then you can add pieces to. The goal is not necessarily to get it right from the beginning. It's to be constantly in this action and reflection mode. And I think that's what's been so helpful. And I think the relationship has worked both ways in learning from each other. What are the unique things going on in Providence? And as it's expands to other parts in Rhode Island, what are the unique things in that? Because we learn from the other settings that this has been replicated in.
Yeah.
I wanted, Karen. I wanted to add to the really beautiful piece of this program of what Deborah talked about community companioning, use that as a verb, of, the really highlighting that our most valuable skill is connecting to other people and sharing that space and experience. And I think when people think about getting involved with programs or they think about mental health, they think in order to support mental health, I have to have this degree or an office or this or that, or, these things. So I really appreciate this program talking about mental health in terms of wellness, and that all of us, each person has that ability and agency to support our own mental health, our neighbors, our friends, our people we don't know next to us. So I really appreciate you making, highlighting that point, Deborah, because I think it's just such an important piece. And I hope, I know and I will look forward to seeing more in Rhode Island, but the ripple effect of that, because when you leave a program, right? And I remember feeling that when we went to your program in Boston, and even when we do it online, when you leave that setting, you leave with a different feeling than when you came in. And that has the ripple effect of when you go out into the world.
I want to give a moment here. First of all, a question came up earlier in the session that I want to pose to the panelists, but I also want to take a moment to identify for people, first, that everyone will receive a copy of today's presentation and a link to today's recording. I know some people have had to sign off a little bit early because of other commitments. But I also want to give an opportunity to ask if there is someone here in Rhode Island that's either interested in participating in the Interfaith Counseling Center's Can We Talk program, or interested in talking more about creating a program in their own community. Who is the best person for them to reach out to first? And can we make sure we put that email address in the chat? And I'm happy to type it in.
Thank you. I think along with the recording, everyone will also receive a link to, we have a virtual Rhode Island Can We Talk this Wednesday. And then we'll also send a link to the Corey Johnson program too, so that people can check out, are welcome to attend any, either, all. And to reach out in Rhode Island, we can reach out, people can reach out to either Michelle or I.
Okay, so I will put Michelle and Christine's emails in the chat box. You might need to give me a minute to do that, but yeah, I mean, I think we should, the point here is to encourage people to spread the news about the Can We Talk program, word of mouth, which we know is the most trusted mechanism for that. But also, if you are a community health worker in your community, working with a community organization or agency, or a faith leader or volunteer, you know, reaching out to Christine and or Michelle about how to move forward in bringing this into community is an important first step in that process.
And can I add just one little thing to that? So when Christine said she's going to send the link to the Can We Talk in Providence and a link to the one in Roxbury Pres, I just want to encourage all of you that are on the webinar to really consider doing that, even if you aren't sure what this looks like. Because one of the things that, I mean, I think Colleen's slide where she talked about if we just told people the what, they wouldn't really understand what we do. And so very many times we tell people the what, we sometimes even tell them the how and the why, but when it's words, it doesn't have the same impact as it does when you actually experience it. And so in order to, I find for myself, maybe this isn't true of others, but in order for me to be able to share and invite someone, I need to have experienced it myself to sort of be able to share with them what that experience is like, how it impacted me. Because again, when someone's going into something new, they have no idea what to expect. And so to be able to share what to expect, that you don't have to share the first time, you don't have to share the 10th time, you know, that you, I mean, you know, just underscoring all of those things that would break down barriers, you know, to people to being attending. So I just want to encourage people to take those links seriously, and you're welcome to join. You're not going to be interrupting something that's ongoing. You would be, you know, very much welcome at any of our gatherings.
Yeah, Dana, I would just reiterate that. I think as much as Christine and I, and I know, you know, Colleen and you would love to work with organizations in Rhode Island. I think Can We Talk, it's an experience. You know, when we first started, we tried to explain the program. We put it into, you know, words, and just folks couldn't just seem to wrap their head around what are these two talking about? But it's, even when we were building our team, you know, it was, you have to experience it first. And despite how many times we tried to explain, once somebody experienced Can We Talk, it just clicked right away. And it sparked an excitement like, oh my gosh, you know, I really want to be a part of this. They could see themselves in it. They could see how valuable it was for their communities, because it did fill that space that is void in many of our communities. And, you know, folks just want to embrace it and move forward. So, you know, to those that have joined the webinar today, I would say, you know, join our session on Wednesday. Certainly, you know, folks at Roxbury Presbyterian Church, they have a number of different sessions that they make available. They're doing it on a weekly basis, and just spend some time marinating in the experience. And then, you know, certainly we would love to, you know, partner and chat with you more about how we can strengthen this program in Rhode Island.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. So the Can We Talk in Rhode Island meets monthly, correct? And this Wednesday is this month's monthly session. And
usually the third Wednesday of the month, unless there's a holiday or something.
And is it a similar time frame to Roxbury? Is it dinner time?
Yes, 6:30. Yeah.
Great. One of the question that came up earlier in the session is tied to the issue of the arts, which I appreciate. I love that the arts are encompassed in this program, because I'm a passionate artist in addition to my advocacy work. And the question that came up was around visual arts and using participants in the program producing art as a part of the healing process. Does that happen, and sort of how is that encompassed in the program? Because I think that's really exciting, and some of us think and feel and heal with the side of our brain that's more visual. So,
Deborah, you want to take that one?
Sure. So once a month, actually, Dana, my sister Donna, and myself, we facilitate writing and art hour. It's, you know, it's the same time as the Can, you know, a different night. I think we were doing it on Tuesday. I can't remember, but this, right? So we haven't done it, of course, since, you know, we're virtual, but it was just a great way for people to just express. I mean, some people are just such great artists or writers, or, I mean, and the things that they would express through their art, it was amazing. It was amazing because, you know, we would, you know, I can't draw, I draw sticks, but the stuff that was coming out of people, it was amazing. So I think that, you know, some people don't like to get up in front of people and talk, you know, you can't sing, you can't, and if, you know, if you could put it on paper like that, it's really healing. I mean, they would talk about what they drew afterwards, and it would just be such a rich kind of experience, you know. And I think they loved it, and I can't wait to get back to it.
Deborah, would you frame the space for that in a similar way, creating the same kind of safe space as the Can We Talk model?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because a lot of times it was art and writing, and we would always leave a space to share, like to express what you have drawn or what you wrote, you know, if you wanted to, because, you know, we believe in silence. But if you wanted to, you could share. And yeah, so we definitely created space for that. And I mean, people just loved it. Yeah.
We also use poetry a lot. So poetry is central to the main Can We Talk model. We almost always open with a poem, because sometimes there's language in that poem that people can grab onto that will express something they're feeling, and maybe they don't have the words for it, but we always use it in the art and writing night. as a way of getting them started. And I know actually when I've even done my own art, I often draw on the poem. I'll sit there and underline words, and that word will lead to a drawing. And I think that's what I love about the art part is you can start drawing something and then you're looking at your drawing and you're going, you see something that you hadn't seen before, and that kind of leads to something else. So oftentimes what people draw is not like a finished drawing, it's almost like a journey map. You know, I remember one night someone just drawing a series of steps of her childhood home. And as she described the, the picture, each step she just, the way she even described what there was, this very simple drawing was just remarkable in terms of what she unpacked. So yeah, that has been a really valuable part of our program.
Yeah.
And we do actually let them keep notebooks. They're not scrapbooks, which is kind of a cool idea. But those that came to that Heart and Writing Night had their own notebook that they would keep, and they would put their things in so they could come back to it each month.
Yeah, it speaks to, early on, Colleen talked about the program being holistic, and it speaks to that, right? It's not just, it's to me, as someone who practices art comes from my subconscious in a way, right? And from my inner self. And I think that provides that opportunity for someone like me who might be very quiet in a sharing session verbally, but I might be drawing throughout the entire thing. So that's exciting to hear.
Karen, I just wanted to highlight one thing, and I think that Dana and Colleen can also speak to this, is silence is a part of the program. There's not constant chatter, from start to finish. There have been sessions I have attended where the room is quiet. The mic is there and there's silence, and it seems like it's silence for like an hour. It could be 30 seconds, it could be a minute, but sitting in that silence is just as important and powerful as people sharing their stories.
Yeah, especially these days where there's so much noise, we don't often have opportunity for silence. And I think that's really personally powerful to be sitting with others, even over Zoom, in silence is a moment of sharing. Like you feel the energy and connection. And I think that's really important. So I don't have other questions. I want to encourage, we still have some time. I want to encourage, we're just nearing the end of our time. So I do see a question from Larry Wilson. I wonder if your We Can Talk methodology can be applied to one's own family, recognizing family as community. My family is about to embark on a family intervention journey for my son who is suffering from bipolar and borderline personality disorder and won't seek help. He is a very angry 28-year-old. The family's purpose is to surround him with love and hopefully build his trust in hopes that it will lead him to a path that gives him support and professional help. We really don't know what we're doing with the intervention, but we're reaching out to God and to people like you who care.
Wow, that's what a beautiful and important question that was just asked. My heart goes out to you and your family. I would say if you could take this model and use that successfully within your family, what a great thing that would be. The reason that it could work, you'd have to, work with the model as you see it on the PowerPoint. But the interesting thing about it is if all of you in the intervention could agree to stick to, a short time of sharing, right? Not go on and on, not respond to each other and say, oh, but I don't think that's true, right? Just stick with what you want to share. Handle the silence that Michelle beautifully talked about, and honor silence when it happens in between. If you can do that, and if the person that you're providing the intervention for can tolerate, and that would be the key, right? They can tolerate and be willing to listen and feel supported while they're being asked to listen. that could be a great way to do it, because if you have a chance to get on to the Can We Talk on Wednesday, or one of ours, which is every Thursday night at 6:30, you will be, like Michelle did a great job of saying it, you'll be kind of shocked. We still are after 7 years. That this thing, you know, people come on new, they've dropped in, you don't know who they are. They fall really well into the structure because you as the people holding it hold the structure. And the guidelines hold the structure. And you need a facilitator. And Deborah is our facilitator. So her beautiful voice and her calm manner and expertise, just, you know, basically the thing I would just add that you haven't heard is that I would say, even in a family one, you just say, you know, okay, the floor is open. If anyone would like to share, speak up and go ahead for 3 minutes. And then after that person shares, you simply say, let's honor what that person just shared. And let there be a little silence. And then anyone else want to say their piece. That model keeps the space. So if you can pull that off with everyone being prepared and the person tolerating it, I think it could be a great way.
I almost wonder too, having been part of a family that needed to provide an intervention, we met as a family without the person that we felt needed our intervention, our help, several times before we sat down with our family member. And I wonder if that model of Can We Talk is a useful model for those earlier meetings, because I think that would have been helpful to us. And I know that post-trauma, with the death of a family member related to substance use disorder, that the sort of Can We Talk model that we used within our family in terms of each sharing our sense of loss, our sense of love and memory and remembrance was really important. And it followed the Can We Talk model, even if just unintentionally, and was important to us as a family for healing.
Yeah, I have found that in my own family, we just my mother passed away in October, and we have had to use the Can We Talk model, because I do come from a semi-large family, and everybody has an opinion, strong opinion. And so we have used this model, and it has worked like beautifully. So, you know, I mean, you know, like I said, I'm not a professional, but I'm a professional family member. And so, I think it can work. It definitely can work, but you definitely have to have guidelines. So you have to have guidelines, boundaries. There's got to be rules.
Yeah.
Because, you know, as a family, we tend to just talk over each other. But there has to be rules. I think it can work.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't see any other questions from the audience. I want to reassure those who are with us that you will receive an email from Christine, I believe, following this webinar with a link to the video recording of today's session, email links, and information that can help connect you to the Rhode Island-based Can We Talk program. I do see a question just popped up. Are you offering any programs specifically for teens or young adults? And Michelle may have information about this on some of the programming that's happening beyond Can We Talk. And then a second question from Alexandra Barroso. Have you worked with non-English speakers? I'm the social worker at Dorcas International. Being a refugee and the journey that brings them here is undoubtedly filled with trauma. I have just recently started with the agency, but it's become very clear to me early on that these refugee clients don't often want to open up about their trauma. I think it would be really powerful with our clients to be able to share, but in their first languages, Swahili, Farsi, and many more. Would you suggest having interpreters present to translate the stories so all participants can understand? Any other thoughts? So 2 things, youth and non-English speaking refugee communities. And I've met with the refugee community at Dorcas Place. They're an amazing group of people.
So first things to share fantastic news about the youth and teens. We just received funding to do 3 years and develop and deliver 3 years of youth Can We Talk, that we're going to take the Can We Talk model, gear it more towards youth. We kind of have our team already clear who that would be. We got funding for that, so stay tuned. We'll have more to share about that and how and exactly what the model is that we've come up with, but it's essential that we do that. The main reason I wanted to do that was we want to be able to have families come. This is all thinking in person always. So a family can come and their young children can go in the childcare. Their teens don't get left at the door while the adults go to the Can We Talk. So that's always been my hope, have it the same night. I know that's a lot, but that's where we're at 7 years in. And remember, this is a journey. You don't have to start that way. Just start with the Can We Talk. You don't have to do the childcare or the teens, but so more to come on that. In terms of I'm going to turn this over in a moment to Dana to answer more, but in the beginning, people would ask us if they could have a translator in the back. And, we'd always say yes, but I think it was really difficult for that person. They were hearing things in lag. We had to make sure that nobody could hear it because you've got to have total quiet listening to what people are doing. So it kind of petered out, that offering people to come and translate in an English speaking one. But what we are very committed to, and Dana can speak to this, is as long as there's bilingual people to get the training from us, we are absolutely thrilled and want people to develop this Can We Talk in other languages. And so I'm going to toss that to Dana because we've had that come up.
Yeah, so one of our replication sites that started in December before COVID, one of their churches has a lot of Spanish-speaking people in the church, and the pastor is actually bilingual. And a lot of the members are bilingual. And so they had exactly that same heart. And again, actually one of my roles when I was at the church that I was at formerly was I was the pastor of multicultural ministry. And we actually translated our services into 4 different languages. So I kind of understand the pros and cons of when it makes sense, because again, we had 4 languages. 2 of the languages worked and the other 2 didn't. And again, I could talk to whoever this person is to sort of explain the value of trying to do translated things. But it's much better if you can do what's going to happen with our translation site, with our replication site, which is where you actually build a team of bilingual Spanish speakers so that we can train them in the model in English, and then they can actually run it in the heart language of the people. Because what I remember from my work with different language speakers is you can be bilingual and you can actually speak really well in English, but if it's not your heart language, it's hard to share the deepest, the deepest things that are going on in your heart. It's hard to share those kinds. So being able to share in your heart language can actually open up levels of healing that you would always feel somewhat limited. So to the extent that we can over time, I think the more successful piece would be to look at who's coming to your organization and say, what are the critical mass groups of languages that we have? Where is the connection? And maybe start with a pilot group. Among one where there's a larger group, again, look at the community. Where are the larger language speaking things? And again, because what we really try to do is, to what Colleen said, you start a replication site doing once a month and none of the other stuff that we're doing at RPC in order to get it going. So we always say building on it. So I would say, rather than trying to meet the need of every single language group, maybe pick one in another language and try a pilot, see how it works. But I think to the extent that you can build teams, and again, this is the beauty of the peer support model. You start one, you start building one, over time you start to see where the passion and the commitment and the capacity level is of the people that are coming to the program, and they can minister to one another. So I think that's a longer conversation, in which I'd certainly be willing to have with them to talk about what that might look like. But
I just wanted to add something that we hadn't put in here. So we are in the process of trademarking Can We Talk? So you can imagine that just come from the development of this over 7 years. And the reason we're going to be doing that is because we want to keep the integrity of that model, not have someone change it and then it doesn't work and it's out there that's causing, God forbid, lack of safety or something else. But even though we'll be trademarking that, we are thrilled to get people to use it, right? So as long as people want to, you know, and for Christine and Michelle, the joy that we have for them being willing to help spread this into Rhode Island is just phenomenal for us. So it's real, you can see, we just want people to use a model that's helpful, but that as we are also saying, there are some of those things I showed in that first slide that people have to agree to do to keep that integrity of safety and for something that we know works.
Yeah, and you know, so the Liz who asked the question about youth, her organization has actually gotten 2 years of funding from the United Way. And so I think she's hoping to connect. I'm going to leave that to Christine to help facilitate happening. But that is a good segue to the question around funding. And there's some important avenues for funding behavioral health programs, community-based programs here in Rhode Island through the Rhode Island Foundation's Behavioral Health Fund. We won investment in that program through health insurance providers who were found to be in violation of mental health parity laws. That's an important fund via the Rhode Island Foundation. The United Way has funding. And I believe that if people reach out to Michelle, I put her email in the chat, and I'm sure Christine will include some email connections too in her follow-up email. She may have other knowledge or insight to help lead people to that funding mechanism, which even if you are a volunteer-led group, let's say you're a church or a faith-based organization and the pastor and maybe a staff person, but then volunteers from the parish are interested in formalizing a program, or you are at Salve Regina and working with a local school, or whatever the case may be, funding is important. It just is. It's a reality to how you sustain and build and ensure the integrity of a quality program. So don't hesitate to reach out and ask questions about that. You may have to do some of your own fundraising. You might have to write a grant proposal, but I know that there is support and help out there for people in that regard. So don't hesitate. And thank you for asking the question and mentioning funding, Liz. Okay, I think I see another response in the chat. So Kathy, and this goes back to the art, Kathy Blackburn had asked about therapeutic scrapbooking, and I know Dana kind of addressed this. It could be beneficial for the arts program dealing in trauma. She works for ICC at Project Outreach in Washington Park, and Washington Park is where this past weekend's shooting occurred. I live less than 3/4 of a mile from where the shooting happened myself. I live in the community. I know how the community has been traumatized by this weekend's shooting and other significant events that have happened really over the past decade. So good question, and provide a second opportunity to talk about arts and healing.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue to something to name. So let's take the tragic example of what you're saying is happening in the community with all of you. That's obviously when it's happened, you want first responders and first responder organizations to really be there for those beginning days, right? We know that we're a second responder. This program is a second responder. And the reason we love to say that is, I'll just speak for Boston. We have all the resources so much for those beginning times and even some support that goes on for families as needed. But one of the reasons why our program took off, we never had to even reach out to people. People were just so hungry once they saw the sign of the church to come and do this, that it's because there's nothing, in most communities, it's not a ongoing, sustainable, going to be more than 6 weeks to 8 months of a group. It's going to go ongoing. That's what people are looking for, that ongoing trauma support. And so that's why we're a second responder. So in answer to your question about the therapeutic scrapbooking, that is a beautiful way of doing some healing, as long as the people have got that first responder. I just want to keep saying that, because when you're in the throes of the initial trauma, the way your body and mind is working, you can't pay attention to something like that when you're not feeling safe, you're not getting the basics, you're in the raw time.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as that feels right for somebody to add this second responder type, it is fabulous. As long as you have that licensed mental health clinician, in case the person, is really having difficulty, and clearly, you want to respond and help refer them to what they need, then I think it's wonderful.
Thank you, Colleen. And thank you, Liz and Kathy. Liz White has posted a link to visual journaling in the chat. And yeah, I agree, Colleen. I mean, one of the things through my work at the Mental Health Association, we partner significantly with licensed clinicians. And we recognize the lack of providers in the state and how hard it is to connect, particularly for people whose first language is in English and who may not look like me. And in connecting with a provider, a licensed provider that can really connect, they can connect with and feel safe with. So I understand how important all of this is, but also how important it is to make sure that that connection is made whenever possible, and that we need professionals in the community, as in my community right now, at this particularly vulnerable moment in time. Michelle, do you have any insight you want to add to this from the Rhode Island Department of Health perspective on that response network, the emergency response network, that first wave of first responders? And then I think we need to, we've gone over time, so I think we need to begin to wrap up shortly.
I think just that, when we think about emergency response, we often think of it in the frame of there's been a disaster. There's been a hurricane for Rhode Island, right? In particular, there's been a hurricane, there's been a flood, there's been, a snowstorm, a blizzard, right? And we certainly know how to respond to those. When we get a blizzard, everyone goes out, they get their toilet paper, their milk, their bread, their supplies, right? We know how to do that. Same thing with some of the other natural disasters, but we don't often think of emergency response in the terms of community, right? That slow moving response, right? And that's something that many states are looking at, is this whole concept of community resilience and what does it mean? And so how do we not only respond to those bigger kinds of events, but also how do we get in and respond to community in a very nurturing way, to things like shootings or violence or, other kinds of sort of interpersonal events where harm is being done. And that is certainly something that the Department of Health is looking at. We know that as we come out of this response into our recovery phase, there's going to be a tremendous need. We have all been traumatized. It doesn't matter who you are. We can all claim some trauma over the past year. And we all need a safe space, a place where we can go and just talk about it. And that is the healing in and of itself. So I see the need for more can we talk type programs, whether they're in English, whether they're in another language. We all are going to be looking for, and people are seeking connection. We're hearing that now, with this, there is a tremendous uptake in the need for, mental health, behavioral health services. And if this can fill the gap for some, maybe not everyone, but it certainly has its place in community. We would love to, again, be able to work with community partners, with organizations, or even just, being a part of our team to create that space to ensure that it's available and that it happens.
Thank you, Michelle. And I want to thank everyone for being here today. Panelists and attendees alike, I want to thank people for the thoughtful questions. And I want to thank each of you panelists for your thoughtful presentations. So Christine King from the Interfaith Counseling Center, Michelle Wilson from the Rhode Island Department of Health, Colleen Sharka, Reverend Dana Baker, and Deborah Johnson from the Corey Johnson program. We so appreciate it. And I look forward to continuing to partner with Christine and Michelle and you all from Boston to see how this progresses and moves forward. Reminder, Rhode Island's Can We Talk program has a session on Wednesday evening. You will get a link to that, share it, help build it, help sustain and support it. And watch for an email from Christine with follow-up links and video and all kinds of other terrific information. Again, I'm Karen Malcolm with the Mental Health Association of Rhode Island, and I appreciate everybody's time on this critically important topic this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.